in Norwegian. So Gukesh and Magnus traded wins in Norway chess. Then in Zagreb, Gukesh beat Magnus in rapid play. And after that, in Blitz, it was a win for Magnus, a draw. There were two Blitz games. But then in the St. Louis Clutch Chess Championship, Magnus got the better of Gukesh in a big way. Out of the 6 games that they played, Magnus won 5 of them and there was one draw. And now they face off against each other in 2026 for the first time. And this is a very interesting battle because 3 points for the win here in classical, and Gukesh would be very much looking forward to beating Magnus. And by the way, both of them approach the game and the start of it very, very differently. Gukesh, so focused, so calm. He looks completely in the zone. Magnus, on the other hand, he has a similar way, but he does not meditate or anything before the encounter. You can see Gukesh closes his eyes, tries to get into the groove. Magnus also thinking about it. For Magnus, this is an important game, not only because his opponent is Gukesh, but he's already lost 2 classical games out of 3. One with Pragnananda, one with Alireza. And we have the guest of honor who makes the first move, pawn to c4 here. And Gukesh takes back the pawn. The English is not getting an outing today in this one. The players are ready. 2 hours each with a 10-second increment from move 40. Handshake and off we go. Gukesh opens the game with pawn to d4. And Magnus, well, does he play d5 here? He waits for a bit and goes pawn d5. Now Gukesh can play the London system here with bishop f4, but he goes pawn to c4, the queen's gambit, and it has been declined with pawn to e6. The knight comes out to c3. And now, very interesting to see that Magnus actually is looking at the other games to see what moves they are playing. And now knight f6. Yes, he brings his knight out. So we are in the traditional queen's gambit declined. And I think Magnus understands Gukesh very well, that in the opening, there's no need to try something new against him. He will give me chances in the middle game. He's not a player who ever goes for drawish setups. Bishop g5 played. And by the way, this is now a Carlsbad structure after takes. White has a central and a kingside majority. Black has a queenside majority. And Magnus plays bishop b4, taking it into the Ragozin territory. This is interesting because knight comes out to f3. Because Ragozin is one of Gukesh's favorite weapons with black pieces. And Gukesh plays knight f3, which is not super popular, and Magnus goes queen d6, breaking the pin and ready to enter in with knight e4. So Gukesh quickly brings his knight to d2, breaking this pin and stopping the knight from coming here because I'll simply take it. And Magnus thinks for a very long time, 10 minutes, and plays c6. He's taking a lot of time in the opening because this is a position which maybe he's not well versed with. It's a new one. And now a simple move is e3. But queen c2 played by Gukesh. And I think one of the ideas of this move is to stop bishop f5. The other one is that he's preparing knight b5 move because the c8 bishop is hanging, and h6 played, attacking the bishop here. Gukesh can take on f6. He can go back to h4. But he goes knight b5. Very, very cool move. Attacking the queen. If you take here, c8 is hanging. And bishop d2 is kind of forced now because you take and you can't take with the queen. b5 hangs, so bishop takes. But he goes queen e7. And that is a very surprising move by Magnus. And I think he's taken a measured call here. He feels that this is a good decision to allow Gukesh to double his pawns. And Gukesh takes it immediately and comes back. He's given up his bishop pair. He spoiled the structure of black. And now Magnus goes knight d7. It's interesting that Magnus actually chose to play this over bishop d2 and going back. I think somewhere he did want such a position where, you know, he makes Gukesh a bit over ambitious. Knight b6. Okay, bishop d3. Now there is a move g3 as well here. But Gukesh prefers simple move bishop to d3. And now rook g8 played to attack the pawn on g2. The rook can get really active down the g file. The bishop can come out and black can long castle. Gukesh calmly plays pawn to g3. And Magnus now brings his bishop to h3. He stops the kingside castling ideas, but I pretty much think Gukesh doesn't want to kingside castle. Queenside is where the king belongs, but he first questions the bishop on b4. Magnus takes on c3. Now, taking with the queen is maybe the right call, but Gukesh, like he always does, takes with the pawn to muddy the waters. He wants to play c4, he wants to play a4, a5, and a beautiful move here by Magnus to bring his knight to c8. He wants to bring it to d6, pawn to c4 played. And now if takes, you take back, and he takes it. He takes c4, knight takes c4. But Gukesh takes with the queen. And that's a bit surprising. What is the queen doing on c4? Knight comes up to d6, attacking the queen. And like by all means, when you observe such a position, you feel that it's white who's better. Look at the structure. Look at black structure, all broken apart. Queen comes to c3. Now, the pawn on a5 is under pressure. But Magnus plays a beautiful move. He understands that the rook belongs on the 5th rank. It's a beautiful rook on g5. And now with 42 minutes on the clock, Magnus is doing well. Gukesh goes bishop e2. He may be wanting to put the bishop on f3. But rook c8, another classy move, preparing the break, pawn to c5. f3 played. I like this move a lot for Gukesh. He's going king f2 and connecting his rooks. Once the rooks are connected, he should be fine. But c5, look at how Magnus has connected his rooks through rook c8, rook g5 and pawn to c5. Well, king f2 is a must. And Gukesh also must take care of his clock. He's down to 19 minutes. They are on move 23. He plays his king to f2. And now Magnus goes rook d5. Both players playing incredibly well here. And now the best idea is to take on c5. But Gukesh goes queen b2, allowing Magnus to take on d4 and isolate his pawn. So takes. And now knight f5 can be an idea to come queen e3 and knight d4. But he goes king f8. Maybe rook e8 is a plan. So rook comes to e1. Gukesh connects his rooks. And bishop to e6 played. Just improving the position of the bishop. It had done its job on the h3 square. Rook d1 by Gukesh. f5 played. Stopping knight e4. Knight goes to f1. Planning knight e3 and the only move to keep the edge f4. Very good. You can't take this pawn. There's knight f5, queen h4. So bishop comes to d3. And now queen f6. Keeping an eye here. The best move is rook e5. But Gukesh makes an error. He goes bishop e4. He had to play rook e5 and the game would have continued. And this is the thing about top level chess, that both players keep making good moves, but one of them flinches, and it's Gukesh who's done that, and Magnus quickly takes the advantage. Rook b5. Now there are these two open files and the two rooks are perfectly placed. The bishop comes to b3, attacking the rook. Rook c1. And the problem here is I take on c1 and there's no good way to take. If you take with the rook, he takes with the queen, giving up this pawn. If you take with the rook, then takes fg3, and the king is too exposed. So queen takes c1, and now Magnus can simply chop off the pawn on d4. Things unraveled for Gukesh too quickly after this move, bishop e4. But you can see how many good moves Magnus made in this game. Rook g5, rook c8, c5, rook d5. Bishop comes back to e6, another beautiful move. He's making all the best decisions. Now, rook b2 check. And it does feel like the Magnus that we are used to seeing for all these years is coming back in this tournament. Queen f2, threatening a mate here, giving up a free piece on d6 with a check. King comes to g7. Queen e5 check. And now f6. What a beautiful move. He must give up the rook, otherwise there's a mate, so he gives it up. Queen takes b2. Magnus takes the queen. Rook b1 to attack the pawn on b7. Takes the a3 pawn. Rook takes b7. King f8. The a pawn is incredibly strong. g4 played. Gukesh down to 36 seconds. a4. The pawn pushes forward. And Gukesh here, with almost no time on the clock, resigns the game. Magnus wins it. And Gukesh there, well, he tried his best, I think, but Magnus was just too good. In too good shape as they start discussing here. I think they're talking a bit about the opening, the queen d6 move.